Research process. In this slide, we'll examine the 6 steps of conducting marketing research from start to finish. The first step is to define the problem. Managers may express a concern and define the problem from the managerial perspective, which is not always helpful in doing marketing research. For instance, they may tell you sales dropped. However, this could be a symptom for a much deeper problem that gives rise to the symptom. The reason for the sales to drop might be that consumer preferences have changed. This could be the real problem. As a researcher, you then need to gather information about the changing consumer preferences and examine the relationship between the changing consumer preferences, their perception of the company's products, and their purchase level. All aspects of the information about the consumer preferences will be what you need to find out from the research. So, you can define the problem as perhaps to understand how consumer preferences might have changed and its impact on their attitudes toward the current product offering. The second step is to develop an approach to the problem. In this step, we are trying to identify what information we should gather to address the problem defined. To identify informational needs for marketing research, oftentimes we refer to analytical framework and models that is known to be effective and theory-driven. In other words, we do a background research for the topic of interest by examining the existing body of knowledge accumulated through previous research. This is often called literature review in the basic research. You may also call it a secondary data research. Yes, you would look at secondary sources of data conducted by someone else. Knowing enough about a theory or existing body of knowledge helps us to pose research questions or even formulate a rather specific responses to the research question, which we call hypotheses. Hypotheses are a statement of the expected relationship among the concepts in the hypothesis. For example, you may hypothesize that changing consumer preference will have a negative impact on the attitude toward the product. Thus, having a hypothesis allows researchers to articulate the concepts that must be captured when we ask questions in a questionnaire. Thus, both research questions and hypotheses are necessary for us to determine the kinds of information we need in order to address the problem. One question often asked is, what is the difference between research question and hypothesis? Well, there is not much difference between the two, except that we use the term hypothesis if we have a specific direction regarding the relationship between the concepts. In this case, we would state the relationship clearly as follows. Changing consumer preference will have a negative impact on attitude towards the product. When we do not have specific expectations due to the lack of sufficient rationale to support it, we call it a research question and would state it in a form of question, as in, how will changing consumer behavior influence their attitudes toward the product? Do you see the difference? In sum, developing an approach to the problem involves doing a literature review or background research and formulating research questions or hypotheses. You might ask, what do I do when there is no theoretical model or analytical framework, perhaps because I am dealing with a brand new phenomenon? My answer would be to dig up the literature thoroughly. There is normally something in existing research that can help you understand the new phenomena. For instance, social media marketing is surely a new phenomenon, but there are plenty of research done in offline mode that could shed light on the consumer behavior in the context of the new medium. I tend to believe a saying, there is nothing new under the sun. Having said this, however, there can be a legitimate reason why marketers are reluctant to rely totally on literature review. First, Most marketing research practitioners may not have access to the expensive database to do the literature review. So they may rely on World Wide Web to gather whatever information they could get their hands on. More importantly, there are also cases when you just cannot gain enough insights about the issue from the literature review because the knowledge generated through the basic research is so general and broad that there is often no specific information tailored for the specific products for the specific target consumer groups. In this case, marketing research professionals tend to prefer conducting some sort of qualitative research to gain insights into the problem. This includes soliciting opinions of industry experts and conducting focus group research or interviews to hear directly from consumers. All of these are called exploratory research because you are exploring the issue rather than testing hypotheses, preconceived expectations. This type of exploratory research helps researchers gather enough information to articulate research questions or hypotheses and ask right questions in a questionnaire that will be used in a conclusive research, which is the next step. The third step is to formulate conclusive research. You will need to determine which type of research to use. You may use a survey, an observation, or an experiment. A right method will be determined in part by research questions and hypotheses, among other things. Next, you work on measurement and scale, which is about operationalizing the concepts embedded in the research questions and hypotheses. For instance, one of the concepts in the hypothesis given previously is attitude towards the brand. Let's say you decided to operationalize the construct by asking the participants to indicate the extent to which the product is positive, negative, desirable, undesirable, useful, useless, high quality, low quality on a 1 to 7-point scale. A set of these 4 questions are a measure of the construct called attitude toward the product. Once measurement and scale is determined, you can easily design a questionnaire by simply including those question items for each of the constructs in the questionnaire and arranging them in a proper order. Thus, measurement is about deciding what to ask in order to capture the true meaning of the concept or construct. Once questionnaire is ready, you will select a right sampling method and sample size. The first step is to do field work and collect the data. This is one of the challenging process. The harder it is to reach the target audience, the more expensive it is to collect data. The fifth step is to prepare the data for analysis and analyze the data. Researchers normally use a statistical package such as SPSS, Excel, R, or SAS. SPSS is the most popular tool in survey research, but R has been catching up rapidly since it is an open source and free. R is great, very powerful. You can draw awesome charts that no other software can match. It is also great for data mining and text mining. The sixth and the last step is to prepare a report and make a presentation. According to a recent survey I conducted, market research professionals consider presentation as the most important fundamental knowledge to learn. I will teach you later how to design presentation slides and make a great presentation. Most market researchers do not get to perform every step of the research process because division of labor works in market research industry too. There are a lot of teamwork involved. If you are running a company as a sole principal like me, you will have to do the majority of the work by yourself. Even then, some of the works may be outsourced. For instance, many researchers tend not to collect data by themselves. Rather, they tend to outsource it to data collection specialty companies like SSI, STS, and Research Now. Having said this, however, Everyone needs to know about the 6-step research process to understand the role of their work in the broad scheme of marketing research process. Okay, we are done on this slide. I probably talked too much on this, but I couldn't help because these slides sum up the whole thing you will learn about marketing research from start to finish. I hope you observed it as much as you can now and revisit this slide later for review.